Has softball winning hurt baseball even more than baseball losing already has? Locked On Gamecocks starts right now.
You are Locked On Gamecocks, your daily podcast on the South Carolina Gamecocks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, guys? Welcome into Locked On Gamecocks. I'm your host, Chris Morler. Hope you had a fantastic weekend. I know I did. Up in Boston for an incredible belated birthday trip with our former producer, Allie, and some friends. Got to go to Fenway Park. A lot of fun. We'll talk about that some other time. But before we get into today's show, which is what we're here for, not my trip to Boston, but I want to say shout out to everyone making Locked On Gamecocks your first listen each and every day. Shout out to our everydayers. Remember, we're a free and available podcast wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, here's what we're going to get into today. Some talk about softball and how it is actually impacting baseball. It's a two-tier type thing here. Before we do, also want to tell you, though, today's episode brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, all capital letters, at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Now, that's all out of the way. We'll get to the Fenway stuff later. Had a great time. Met a couple people listening to the podcast, which was crazy and really cool. Met a couple South Carolina fans up there. Shared a couple of Gamecocks outside on Lansdowne, which was really neat as well. But here's what we want to get into today. Softball has a incredible weekend, right? Incredible weekend. They win their regional that they were hosting and advance to the Super Regionals, where they will now host on Friday UCLA, a very good UCLA team. I'm a little bit nervous, but it's whatever. We'll get into that later in the week. But they win all three games. It was a very, very impressive weekend. You saw some teams struggle. Texas A&M struggled. They were done pretty quickly. This is a team, though, or this is a weekend for South Carolina where South Carolina goes in and wins this thing in emphatic fashion by having a run roll 8-0 win on Sunday. They win 5-2 in game one and then didn't give up a run to a good North Florida team, by the way, like a good North Florida team in this regional. In the weekend, they win 5-2 against Elon, 3-0 against North Florida, and then 8-0 against North Florida as well. Like I said, I mean, like, you outscored your opponent 16-2. You didn't give up a run the final 2 days. That's about as good as you can get from a winning standpoint. The pitching was phenomenal. I mean, what else can you say about that? You know what I mean? You only allowed – actually, I mean, they out-hit you in one of the games. In the 3-0 game, they had 6 hits. But making sure that no one scored, getting the 3 runs, timely runs, by the way, timely runs in the 6th inning in that game. And then, like I said, kind of just putting it on them in game 3, where you end up run rolling them 8-0 in a 5-inning game against a good North Florida team, man. You hold them to 3 runs only on Sunday. I would love to see the offense get going a little bit earlier. Of the last 2 games where you won 11-0 combined over North Florida, you didn't get a run until the 4th inning, and then you also scored, I think it's a combined 9 of your 11 runs were in the 5th inning or later. So would love to see the basket going earlier. This is going to be a much better team coming in with UCLA. UCLA, a team that I believe has 50-plus wins. I think they have like 51 wins. They were a really good team in the Big Ten this year, which feels weird to say they're in the Big Ten. But 8 versus 9, they are coming home. I want to first, before we talk about how this affects baseball, I want to talk about just how good of a job Ashley Chastain has done. And she deserves so much credit, man. One of my favorite things to watch in all of college sports is, because we're all fans, right? We're all fans. And I think that, like, that's why it means so much to us that, like, you want softball to do well, baseball, football, whatever sport. Whenever you see someone go out there in between the white lines or on the hardwood, whatever. I got white lines on the hardwood. But in between the white lines, metaphorically speaking, anytime you see that Gamecock emblem, anytime you see SC, anytime you see South Carolina, garnet and black, go out in between the white lines, you want that team to win, regardless of who the coach is, who the players are. what sport it is. It could be Quidditch, for all I know. You want to see your team win. We're all fans, right? Watching Ashley Chastain coach this team after playing for this program and playing for this university is a different feeling. It's so special to watch former players come back and coach their alma maters. There are certain jobs that open up, and you can just tell for whatever reason. Sometimes it doesn't always work out great, but there's a lot of times where you watch somebody that's coaching and you know that not trying to steal the SEC cliche here, but you know it means more to win there for them than it would somewhere else. This is an odd example, but Ed Orgeron is like one of my favorite examples of this. Ed Orgeron didn't go to LSU. He grew up in the state, though. I wouldn't think he went to Northwestern State, I want to say. But he was a huge LSU fan and loved the state of Louisiana, and that meant the world to him to win there. So you saw that in 2019. You saw it on the sidelines every game. It meant so much to him to win there. Now, I don't think Ashley Chastain is a lot like Ed Orgeron. She has clearly a much better handle on the English language than Coach O did. I say that tongue-in-cheek. But it's been phenomenal to watch her come back to her alma mater and go win ball games and win them a lot, win a lot of them in year one. Now, that has been awesome to watch, like I said. Now, this is another thing here. You got 16 teams obviously left in the Super Regionals. 9 of the 16 are from the SEC. You are going to have a minimum 3 teams make it because you have 3 different SEC versus SEC matchups in the Super Regionals. I think Oklahoma Bama is one of them. Ole Miss Arkansas, I want to say, is another one. Tennessee is hosting Nebraska, so that's not one of them. LSU got knocked out. We'll talk about that in a second. And there's a couple others as well. But, there was a lot of SEC teams that made it. There weren't a lot of SEC. There were also some SEC teams that didn't make it. And I can tell you, as somebody that works closely with people in Baton Rouge, what happened at LSU, it has not gone over well. What happened at A&M, not gone over well. So don't take this for granted because you expect to win at a place like South Carolina. You didn't expect to win this quickly, for one. And 2, you have seen a number 10 seed, LSU, who's been a great team over the last several years. Beth Serena has been a great coach there, but has failed to make a super regional in 3 of the last 4 years. Texas A&M became the first number 1 overall seed ever to not make it out of their own regional. So don't take this for granted. I don't think any of you will, but I'm just saying in general, don't take it for granted. And also, let's not take Ashley Chastain for granted. The part that is, I feel like, very interesting to me is that a lot of times at some places, not South Carolina, but at some places, success in other sports will alleviate the pressure and the frustration that some fans may have when another sport is underperforming. That is not the case in South Carolina. And Ashley Chastain and this year's South Carolina softball team, the success they've had, I think in some odd way, may be even more detrimental to Paul Maneri's case for being back in year 2 with South Carolina baseball. Now, we'll talk about that after the break. Before we go to break, though, I do want to give you a quick shout out to our friends at Monarch Money. You guys have heard me talk about Monarch Money before. As I always say, you're going to hear me talk about Monarch Money again, and with very good reason. Monarch Money right now. If you ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, give you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. I'll tell you right now, I'm going to need Monarch Money now more than ever after my weekend in Boston because we spent way too much money tracking my money. It was both a blessing and a curse for me to have to see what we did and the damage we did at Fenway Park and outside of it. But I wouldn't trust anyone else more than Monarch Money with that adventure, I will call it. Take control of your finances right now with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, all capital letters, at monarchmoney.com for for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. All right, so that is all for the first part. When we come back, we are going to discuss just how much the success of this softball season for Ashley Chastain has impacted Paul Mainieri and the lack of success for the South Carolina Gamecock baseball team. Locked On Gamecocks continues right after this. All right, welcome back in. We are back. And listen, we're recording this Monday night. The SEC baseball tournament starts tomorrow morning, 9:30 Central, 10:30 Eastern. Probably said those things backwards. And South Carolina obviously is a 15 seed. We have talked at length about the frustrations that have come with this South Carolina team. And I think we all are aware how frustrating this team has been. So I don't want to beat a dead horse with any part of that. What I do want to talk about is this. Now, the success that has happened across the landscape of basketball, of South Carolina sports has been awesome. Football getting to 9 wins, just an eyelash short of 10. I mean, you could really make the case they were close to 11 if you want to count the bowl game. But anyway, they finished with 9 wins. Then you talk about women's basketball competing and playing in another national championship. Then you talk about softball in year 1 of a head coach getting to a super regional. Men's basketball, obviously, massive down year, only 2 wins in the SEC. And then you have the baseball team who had a historically bad season. There's no other words around it, and historically bad season. So I think it's interesting because in any year, you would give Paul Mainieri the benefit of the doubt after only 1 year. But what is not helping his case, outside of the horrible performance on the field, outside of the terrible lacking in self-awareness things he has said to the media, and then lastly, what's also not helping is the success right across campus for Ashley Chastain and the softball team, right? I still think Mainieri will get another year. I told you, the most logical parts of my brain tell me he deserves another year. That being said, the stuff he said about, well, I didn't think it would be, I didn't realize how hard it was to win the SEC, that blew my mind. And the sentiment, I think, from a lot of South Carolina fans is that that's just unacceptable. And it is because you can't underestimate the SEC. I did a whole show on this earlier, and you guys heard me talk about it. Underestimating the SEC is insane to me. But now you move forward and you start looking at just like if we want to just look at factual things and where they should go from here. I do think that the softball team's success is going to be a detriment in terms of the optics, for one, and then 2, talking points about whether or not he should stay on for another year. And that's not his fault. He cannot control what happens in what do you call it? He can't control what happens in for another sport. And it sounds odd that like a softball, like someone else's success would somehow be used against him in a sport that does not correlate. It's just in the same athletic department. What's not helping Paul Mainieri's case is that Ashley Chastain came in year 1 and inherited a program that by all means has been way less successful than South Carolina baseball. And then if you want to go back 1 more year and you look at Lamont Paris inherited a team that had been pretty good under Frank Martin and had made a Final Four under him. And like there was some success, but like in year 1, he finished 3rd in the SEC. They went 13-5 in the SEC. Like year 2 has been bad, but year 1 was phenomenal. That's a year 1, first year head coach having success, right? I mean, like, hold on. We're going to bring this up real quick. I think everyone expected more out of this baseball team, and with very, very good reason. But another thing that has become somewhat of a proven entity or a consistent thing with this program and athletic program as a whole is success in year 1 regardless of the sport. So I think at the very least, the excuse that is the easiest excuse to make, and I think an excuse feels like a almost too harsh of a word sometimes, because it's also a logical thing. It's like, dude, it's been 1 year. It's been 1 year. We know he's a proven winner at the national level. He's won a national title in this conference, in this sport. But like, you don't really get to have as much leniency, and the leash is a little bit shorter because of the fact it's like, dude, Lamont Paris said it. He didn't win a national title, but he went 13-5 in a deep league. I go back to the softball thing, right? And you talk about Ashley Chastain coming in year one for softball, and like, this SEC baseball season it's super deep. It is incredibly deep, but softball is arguably deeper. Like, I mean, there's 15 softball teams in the SEC. Vanderbilt doesn't have a softball team. There's 15 softball teams in the SEC. All 15 teams made the postseason. All 15. Like, 9 are, I think it was, I mean, I don't know. I forgot exactly how many hosted a regional, but I mean, it was a good amount. I know it was South Carolina, LSU, A&M, Oklahoma, Tennessee. That's 5 alone right there. Alabama hosted one. That's 6. I mean, it had to be a decent amount. I apologize for not having it in front of me. I think it was at least 8 or 7 or 8 teams that hosted a regional. So half of that. You have 9 teams that made the super regional, right? Like, you're going to get at least 3 teams in Oklahoma City at the Women's College World Series. Like, you can't make the case, well, man, it's just tough this year because the SEC is so deep. The SEC is deeper, arguably, in softball. And that's where I go back to this. I always say this. I say it over and over again. If we're going to talk about sports, we're going to do so in a logical, a place of logic and reason, okay? And that's where I get at with this, which is, I'm not going to make this decision. I'm kind of tired about talking about it. Like, I hate to say this because I want South Carolina to win as many games as possible, and I want them to make it as far as possible into the SEC tournament. They open with Florida tomorrow. That feels like it's going to be a loss. The team you already got destroyed by a couple weeks ago on the weekend. You lost, I think the run differential was 31 on the weekend. Like, by all means, the season will probably end tomorrow. Part of me feels like that's a good thing because there's only so much more you can take. The chances of this team making it to the College World Series in Omaha are 0, basically. The chance of them getting to the tournament are basically, or winning the tournament are basically 0. So part of me wants this thing to be like, let's just cut the losses, figure out, and at least let's make a decision on where to go from here. And if you're not going to fire Maneri, which is fine, by all means, give him a second year. We don't have to agree on everything. I could be wrong about it. Maybe he takes the Don Staley route. Don Staley route, where it's like, dude, she's the best coach in college basketball, maybe besides Gino Auriemma, and maybe even better at this point, even though they lost to him, right? But like, it took her first 3 years, they didn't even make the postseason. You know, it took a while to get that thing going. It took her, let me count it up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It took her 9 years to win her first natty. Maybe he takes that route where it's like, I don't think he'll have enough time to not make the postseason 3 straight years. But I get the patience. I get the stuff. There will be changes made. One of the things that's been talked about consistently, and I think this is a really good move, is, I mean, the pitching coach has been horrible, but he's also been a recruiting coordinator and the recruiting coordinator at LSU, and he was really good in that role. He's clearly not a pitching coach because this pitching staff has been god-awful for most of the year. So maybe you make some moves within, because the sentiment from a lot of people is, well, he's not gonna cut his boy. Like, that's his dude. Like, why would he do that? So if that's the case, fine. But there has to be some kind of restructuring and realignment of what we're doing moving forward. Just not just for optics, but because of, like, logistically speaking, things have to change. Statistically speaking, things have to change. Successfully speaking, things have to change. Like, you have to make a change. So I think that whether that changes from the top up or top down, like, and you cut Maneri, which I don't think it's going to be that, guys. I really don't think it's going to be that. I could be totally wrong, but I do not think it's going to be that. I do think you're going to see some changes. And again, here are the things you're going to have to talk about the facts that go into this, right? And I'm just, if we're going to talk about sports, we're going to do it with logic and factual information. And here are the things that are factual about this team. Fewest SEC wins in 55 years. Or, I'm sorry, fewest SEC wins since they became an SEC team since 1992, right? So 34 years. I brought up earlier, you don't like the odds of them winning in Omaha are non-existent. That's not me being funny. Their odds to win the SEC baseball tournament are plus 10,000. Them and Missouri have the same odds. That's really some FanDuel, right? The odds to win the SEC tournament. FanDuel also released the odds of who the finalists will be in the tournament. There were 42 total combinations with all 14 teams. Or I'm sorry, with 14 teams of the 16. 42 combinations of finalists. So it's like LSU and Texas is plus 900, LSU and Arkansas plus 900, or LSU and Vandy plus 900. The only two teams that didn't even have odds to make it to the finals, South Carolina and Mizzou. That's how this team is being looked at, is they are on that same level as Mizzou. And Mizzou, historically speaking, is one of the worst Power 4 teams in the history of the sport. And the last thing I'll bring up that is like maybe the biggest concern out of all this is you talk about, well, the one thing you can always hold or hang your hat on, it may not have always worked out well, but like from a recruiting standpoint, this is from Perfect Game. I saw this on Twitter earlier from Gamecocks. So shout out to Sen for this. This is since 2011. These are your recruiting rankings for South Carolina. You've never finished outside of 30th from 2011 to 2024. Under Ray Tanner, first, this is starting in 2011. 2011, you were first. 2012, you were ninth. Then Chad Holbrook comes in. 2013, you were third. 2014, sixth. 2015, fifth. 2016, eighth. 2017, fifth. Mark Kingston comes in. 2018, 20th. 2019, 28th. 2020, 4th. 2021, 25th. 2022, you were 15th. 2023, you were 26th. 2024, you were 19th. As of today, the 2025 season, you're 99th. That part is unacceptable. So if you're going to bring in a bunch of new talent, which they very well could, would love to see it. I do know that the money they're going to spend NIL-wise in baseball is going to be increased, which is good news. And maybe you just need another year. But going back to our original argument, the success of South Carolina softball has been awesome. The lack of success of this baseball program this year has been exacerbated even more because of the success from the softball team. That is all for today's show. Tomorrow, we're going to do a post-game show about South Carolina baseball and then hopefully not have to talk about it much more. But we do have 2 episodes coming tomorrow. One on some comments that were made by former Georgia defensive lineman David Pollock, and it's a really good idea. So start thinking about it now. Should there be an actual salary cap, not a salary cap, or a cutoff of the amount a freshman or newcomer should make in NIL? We talk about all that tomorrow. Until then, I hope all of you have a great rest of your evening or start to your day. Make sure you tune in tomorrow after the game against Florida. Locked on Gamecocks. We'll see you then. Go Cox.